We have a tool that is constantly telling us what's happening underneath the surface. We just have to pay attention. Hey everyone, I'm Thais Sky. Welcome to Reclaim, a podcast for women by women on conversations that matter. Hello, Thais Sky here. Welcome to Reclaim the podcast. We're in part 3 of the Reclaiming Worth series. If you haven't checked out part 1 and 2, I highly recommend you do that first. Not that they necessarily go in order, but they kind of go in order. So go check out part 1, then part 2, and then come back and join us for part 3. I am doing a 5-part series called Reclaiming Worthiness, where we're going to be exploring, that's it, worthiness, and what it means, what it looks like, and how we can feel like we can take up space, yeah? Take up space in a way like we can ask for what we want and feel worthy of it. We can invest in ourselves and feel worthy of it. We can wear whatever the fuck we want and feel worthy of it. We can ask for a raise. We can ask our partner to support us. We can ask for a partner and feel worthy of it. I love worthiness. I have devoted my life to this subject. I got your back when it comes to how do we really infuse our lives with a greater sense of worth. Now, let me tell you something about worthiness. I deeply believe that we are all worthy, 1. 2, I deeply believe that that sense of worthiness is within all of us. And I deeply believe that the journey is not of necessarily reclaiming worthiness. Well, I guess we are reclaiming it. What am I trying to say? The journey is not of creating worthiness. There we go. We don't just create it out of nowhere. We actually have it inherent within us. So the journey is actually that of finding our sovereignty. Because as we go on the journey of finding out who we are and expanding our capacity to be with all of who we are, our innate sense of worthiness that is there, a little seed that is there within the hearts of all of us will start to blossom. So I don't talk about cultivating worthiness from the sense of fake it till you make it and just believe in yourself. And if you just, have the right mindset and if you, just do all these things and exercise and all, if you follow this list of things that you can do, then you'll feel worthy. I don't believe that shit. I think that's all temporary worthiness. I think that's an infusion of worthiness. And hey, sometimes we need that. Sometimes what we really need is an infusion. And for that, I got you. I understand. But if we're talking about long-term worthiness, if we're talking about changing our lives, if we're talking about feeling a total transformation of our capacity to really be grounded and centered and whole in the world, yeah, that's going to require a little bit more effort than just thinking the right things. But like I said, I got your back. I know all things worthiness. And today we are going to explore feelings, emotions. Because yesterday we talked about tending to the wound. We talked about the emotional wound, which is the worthiness wound. We explored a little bit about how the worthiness wound comes to be. And now I want to dissect a little bit about what I mean by emotional wound. What I mean about emotions. Because emotions are extremely powerful. And in fact, we are all making decisions consistently based on our emotions. We just don't know it. Like I shared yesterday, we live in a very logical-based society. At least we think we do, right? We make these priorities of the intellect, like academia, like it's all about what you know. And we've lost touch with another really important but different knowing, which is our emotional knowing, which is intuition, which is body knowing. Talking about emotions, you can't talk about emotions without talking about body and somatic healing and really getting back into this vessel that we are gifted with. They go hand in hand, and I'll talk a little bit about how they do that in a minute. But, we've lost this. We've lost the art of being with our emotions. And it's truly heartbreaking because what happens is when we're not taught the tools of how to be with our emotions, well, they tend to feel really overwhelming a lot, We have a lot of feelings. We don't know what the fuck we're feeling. So we stuff it all down or we push it away or we explode it onto other people. We feel really unsafe in our bodies and we don't trust it. So we say, oh, well, then I don't trust my body. So what am I going to do? I'm going to numb myself out. I'm going to disconnect. How am I going to do that? Well, for me personally, was through binging. I had what I now know to be bulimia. I was never formally diagnosed, but I would binge and have these huge binges and then try to compensate through exercise and starvation and any way that I could keep my body weight the same while still consuming large amounts of food. And it was terrifying. I was so numb, I was so scared, and all I knew was that I wanted to eat. It took a lot of work for me to recognize that my eating disorder had nothing to do with food and had everything to do with the emotional pain body that I was not accessing. So I began this journey. This was about 10 years ago, of really understanding, well, what are emotions? Like, truly, like, what are emotions? How do we develop these emotions? And how can we start to hold space for our emotions so they don't run our lives? Because if we ignore them, they definitely run our lives, right? I share this story often, or this analogy, this long analogy, because I think it's so potent. It's like, let's say that you and your partner break up, and a few weeks later, you hear that your partner is going to the same party that you're going to. And you decide you're going to go. You're going to go because you're not going to let this person be the boss of you, right? Like, you're going to show them what's up. So you go to the party, but whenever you see your ex-partner, you look busy, or you look down, or you duck, or you avoid, and you're just constantly monitoring for where this person is all night. Like, how do you look? Do you look good? Do you look acceptable? Right? Like, the entire night, you are in constant vigilance for where your ex-partner is. Now, you leave the party. Tell me, who had the power in that scenario? Was it you? No, it was your partner. Your partner had the power. And it's the same thing with emotions. The more we try to duck it, numb it, avoid it, well, guess what? It's actually holding the power. And so if we want to shift the power back to our own sovereignty, well, my love, we're going to have to go into the heart of emotions. So that's why they're so important, because, our emotions are connected to our unconscious mind. Okay, so like if you think about the conscious mind and the unconscious mind. The conscious mind is your rational, logical thoughts. It's everything that you're cognizant of. Your unconscious mind is everything that you're not cognizant of. It's what's underneath the surface. And that's where our memories are stored. That's where our biological functions are stored, like the function to be hungry, the function to have sex. This is where our feelings are stored. Our feelings are stored in the unconscious mind. So as much as like you may want to rationalize what you're feeling, and like as much as you want to change your emotions through your rational brain, it's not how that works. And so what tends to happen is we feel something, and then we use the rational mind to justify why we feel the way we feel, and then we let our emotions kind of run the show. And what happens is, well, it's quite a mess, isn't it? We make a lot of sloppy decisions, we're very reactive, and we really collapse ourselves in our lives. And so instead, what if we were to first understand our emotions and use our rational brain to understand and unpack our emotions, and then from that place, we can decide what we want to do with it. Because here's the truth of the matter. Emotions are data. They're data. They're telling us something, but they're not directions. Just because you feel a certain way doesn't mean that that's what's happening. Just because you feel like you're being abused doesn't mean you are being abused, right? Like we really have to use discernment to understand that like feelings are telling us something, but it doesn't mean that it's telling us something is happening. It's not truth with a capital T. It's truth, momentary, lowercase t, yeah? So unconscious, conscious. What we want to be doing is we want to be accessing like, what are we feeling? How are we feeling? How does that feel in our body? And then from that perspective, we can start to use our conscious brain to explore. Because if our emotions are connected to our unconscious mind, that means our emotions are perceiving things that have greater root, that have greater depth than we could possibly understand on a conscious level. Isn't that amazing? Like we have a tool at our disposal right now that informs of what's happening within our memory bank, what's happening within our DNA, within our ancestry, within our body, within our bones, We have a tool that is constantly telling us what's happening underneath the surface. We just have to pay attention. But I know that it can get really overwhelming, right? That's the problem. The problem is you're like, okay, I get it, Thais, but like I'm a very emotional person and I feel a lot and I tend to be very overwhelmed by them. Well, let me tell you what. Generally, the people who feel very overwhelmed by emotions, they're the ones that feel a lot, quote unquote, actually aren't feeling their emotion because an emotion passes through your body relatively quickly. So if you're harboring, if you're overwhelmed by it, then odds are you're not really feeling it. What's happening is you're really into the story of the emotion and you're letting the story of the emotion run the show. Now, that's not to say that I want you to be feeling all of your emotions all the time. I do want to add a caveat here because particularly if there's trauma, particularly if there's some really big stuff that happened in our past, sometimes it's not appropriate to feel the emotions. We may not be in the right container for it personally, right? We may not have the right support system. We just may not know what to do with those emotions. So I'm not saying feel it all the time, every minute of every day. What I am saying is that emotions are data, not directions. And our emotions are constantly communicating to us what's happening underneath the surface. And we get to decide. If we disconnect from our emotions, we're also disconnecting from our body and we're disconnecting from our intuition. So you get to decide. You can be in your head all you want. If that's how you want to run your life, please, by all means. If you want to intellectualize your emotions and if you want to be, completely having a mental experience of your life, go for it, by all means. However, my feelings are that you're here because you want to deepen, you want to root down, you want to ground in your body, and you want to use your emotions to deepen your understanding of life. So if that's you, you're in the right place. And so the encouragement, the invitation is to recognize that, we all have different emotional elevators. This is something that my therapist said to me once that really resonated with me. She was sharing how my emotional elevator goes higher and lower than most people. And it goes faster, higher and lower than most people. And what I like about that is that usually the connotation is, oh, you're so emotional, as if that's a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. Feeling things is not a bad thing. It means that your elevator goes higher and lower. And isn't that amazing? Because if it goes lower, it also goes higher. And you get to feel tremendous joy and happiness in a deeper way. I don't know about you, but that is so worth it to me. The amount of joy that I get to experience in my life because I'm not afraid to look at some of my more uncomfortable emotions, like, hell yeah, that's what I am talking about. The other thing that I want to make sure that I address is that there are no bad emotions. I know that oftentimes when we talk about emotions, we talk about there's good emotions and there's bad emotions. And we want to be, highlighting the good emotions in our lives and we want to be running away from our bad emotions. And we run away from bad emotions in the name of spirituality all the time. We're like, oh, I just got to shift this. I got to ask for a miracle to shift this perspective. Or I'm going to go to yoga, I'm going to do meditation, not in an inquiry of what I'm feeling, but to change how I'm feeling because I'm feeling stuck, I'm feeling gross. And so we go and do these very enlightened things and we think that what we're doing is a good thing, but really we're just using those tools to run away from our emotions. So don't be afraid of your emotional elevator. It is here to be of service to you. It is here to support you. And no matter how your emotional elevator rides, it's not good or bad. There are no such things as bad emotions. The way I tend to say that there's comfortable emotions that we tend to be more comfortable with, and emotions that we tend to be less comfortable with. And surprisingly, for many of us, happiness and intimacy are emotions that we're uncomfortable with. You think that, uncomfortable emotions are just sadness and anger, but the fact of the matter is, it's actually pretty easy for most of us to feel sad. It's very difficult for most of us to give ourselves permission to feel worthy of being happy. Okay? So if we think of emotions as, what our unconscious is perceiving. Our consciousness, our, intellect is perceiving a situation one way, and our emotions are perceiving a situation another way. Well, they tend to clash, don't they? And so the opportunity is not to be in a battle within ourselves about what the truth is, but to use the intellect to deepen into what am I experiencing unconsciously. And that's the key to really unlocking some deeper beliefs that we have about ourselves and about our lives. Again, back to that shadow work, right? The more that we get to ask ourselves, well, if I'm feeling sad and I don't know why I'm feeling sad, there's no reason for me to be sad. Well, stop trying to reason with your sadness. Instead, slow down. Slow down and notice, what does sadness feel like in my body? How do I know that I'm sad? This is a question that I ask constantly to my clients. Like, how does it feel in your body? Because our emotions feel a certain way in our body. Our body is the vessel in which emotions communicate to us. So let's start to use this vessel. Let's start to thaw the disconnect between the body and the mind. When I started doing yoga, there was such a deep disconnect. I did not trust my body at all because my body was telling me to binge and to binge and to binge. And so, of course, I didn't trust it. Of course, I didn't want to listen to it. But through the practice of yoga, I started to realize, like, wait a minute. My body isn't trying to fight with me. My body is trying to serve me. And this is how it found a way to do so. I don't have to distrust my body. And yes, our society so desperately wants us to distrust our bodies, because when we're disconnected from our bodies and our intuition, we're not making grounded decisions, right? So we're more likely to make decisions based on other people's input. When we're disconnected from our bodies, we're much more likely to lack consent and allow other people to do things to our bodies that we would not generally say yes to. Being disconnected from our bodies is a way that the culture continues to perpetuate oppression against women. So reclaiming our bodies and owning our bodies and starting to develop a new way of trusting our bodies in the exact way it looks right now is a radical, radical thing. Yeah? So yes, maybe society took away your ability to trust your body. And now it's time to do that journey of coming back and reclaiming it, because your body is yours and yours alone. And when we can come back to this vessel that is this body, when we can start to connect with emotions in a deeper way, let me tell you what happens. You feel things faster, like it moves through you faster. You're able to connect with empathy and compassion for other people in a deeper way that doesn't overwhelm you. When you can come back to your body, you learn how to cultivate boundaries. Ooh. That B word, let me tell you what, boundaries is hard, bitch. Like, it is so hard for us to have proper boundaries when we don't even know our bodies. So coming back to our body and using our emotions as the messenger allows us to really get grounded on when our boundaries are being violated. My body can tell me exactly when somebody is violating my boundaries. More, like, faster, better, stronger than my conscious mind. And so why wouldn't I want to pay attention to that? Why wouldn't I want to deepen into that? Yeah? So you may be thinking, okay, I hear all this. I hear that, like, emotions are important. I know, because I feel a lot of emotions. I know that they're important, Thais. Like, I get it. Now what? Like, help me feel them. Help me feel these emotions. Help me, get the most out of my emotions. Well, the best place to begin, yesterday we talked about the tool of getting curious. Well, today the tool is non-judgment. Now, this is a hard one, because when we're talking about the more uncomfortable emotions, we tend to go into the storyline. This is something that happens often when I first start working with a new client. They'll say, I'm feeling a certain way, or they'll start sharing a story. I'm like, okay, but how did that feel in your body? And they'll start there, but then they'll go off into, and it's because she did this, and then I did this, and then blah, blah, ba-doo, and they go into the story. And I often invite them, okay, I noticed that you're very interested in going into your story. However, that's not really what you're feeling. What's really here? Because the story is a way that we run away from our feelings. It's a way that we try to justify. So if we can get curious, like we talked about yesterday, but then also not judge what is here, what starts to happen is we start to develop trust for ourselves again. When we were little and we cried or we felt a certain way, oftentimes our parents are like, don't feel that way. It's okay. And they try to give us some lame-ass advice, right? God love our parents, to help us navigate these emotions. They didn't want us to feel pain, so they try to take it away. But they did a disservice in many ways, because now we don't know how to feel pain. We don't know how to be with our emotions. And so we have a lot of judgment towards them. We have a lot of judgments about how our emotions are supposed to come through in our lives. We have a lot of judgments about how it's supposed to look. We have a lot of judgments, period. Well, my invitation for you is, can you just allow the emotion to be there? And you can even give yourself a time. Like, I'm going to allow myself to feel this way without getting into the story, without going into the narrative, without trying to change it for 5 minutes or 15 minutes or an hour or a day. And then I'm going to move forward. Like, give yourself space to really feel whatever it is you're feeling, particularly the more uncomfortable emotions. Like, when's the last time you really gave yourself permission to actually feel this shit and not run away and not get into your head about it? Feel it. Feel it in your body. How do you know that this is the emotion that's going on? Now, generally, we tend to have like 3 to 4 emotions at a time. So identify those emotions and then notice how it feels in your body. And that's it. I'm not changing anything. You see that? Because even by the statement of, okay, feel your emotions and then try to change them, what I would be saying if I were to say something like that is, don't trust your emotions. Well, I'm telling you that you're allowed to trust yourself and you're allowed to trust how you feel. So you don't have to justify it. Just be with it. But again, emotions are data, not directions. That doesn't mean that you are entitled to take action from those feelings. Just because you feel a certain way doesn't mean that that's what's happening. However, we don't even know what's happening if we're not really giving ourselves the container to just feel it. You'll be amazed at how fast emotions can move through us when we just give it space to breathe. To breathe. Now, you may be wondering, okay, but like I give my emotions plenty of space and then I find myself wallowing. Well, wallowing isn't really feeling either, right? Wallowing is the story. So if you notice yourself wallowing, take a deep breath, reconnect with your body, notice how your body is feeling, and then go do something that feels very nourishing for you. Do something that will really honor your body, honor your needs. And then tune back in to see how you're feeling and what's happening. Not because we're trying to change anything, because there's wisdom here, but we're cultivating space. And sometimes when we're like deep in the trench of the emotion, like when we're really triggered or really like in a spiral of emotions, it's very, very hard for us to hold space for that, especially at the beginning. So step back. Give yourself that grace to step back, to change tunes for a little bit with the promise that you're going to come back and you're going to open up space for that. Okay? So please let me know how this series is going for you on I was going to say on iTunes. Don't do that. Oh, you could leave a review on iTunes if this is resonating with you. But yeah, check in with me on Instagram. Like, talk to me. Tell me how this series is landing for you. Tell me any ahas that you're getting from the conversation of emotions. I love hearing from you all. It means so much to me. Seriously, y'all make my life. It's very life affirming to hear how much this stuff is like moving in your life and that you're feeling like it's landing. So please, I am Thais Sky. You can also use the hashtag Reclaim the Podcast. I would love to hear from you. And of course, if you are really interested in deepening your capacity to be with your emotions and use your emotions as a vessel for your wisdom, this is a whole module that we're going to be exploring in Worthy Women Rise, my 4-month signature group program. And you can learn more about that at worthywomenrise.com. I will be back tomorrow for part 4 of the Reclaiming Worth series. Sending you my love.